Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 203. Today's episode, I have a really special interview with my new best friend, Dr. Marielena DeSanctis. She is the president of the Community College of Denver, and she is an old friend of one of my clients who you have heard on this podcast before, Sherry Begun. And Sherry introduced me to Marielena, and I met with her a few weeks ago and had this interview, and it was so impactful, had so touched my heart. And I am really excited to just share the entire experience with you. But I want to point out a couple of things before we get into today's episode. So one of the things is that Dr. Marielena is a Latina woman, and she talks about her process to having success in her career and some of the red flags that she looked out for along the way. Namely speaking, she had zero desire to be the token woman, not to mention Latino woman, in part of any leadership system. And so she was very protective all along the way, making sure that she surrounded herself with roles that she could truly dig into, have support, and have success all along the way. And I think that's so important for you to realize that we're not just looking to get promoted, we're looking to have a successful promotion. And she really demonstrates how she made that possible for herself. And then in particular, her view of leadership, her incredible vulnerability. There are 2 times in today's episode that she brought me to tears in her stories that felt so joyful, so heartbreaking, and also just so riveting and impactful. And I thought about you as the listener, as somebody who, strives to really do something different at the leadership table and to just really bring your whole self. And I think she does that so beautifully. So I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. Let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out, because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I'm your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited to be here with you again this week. Today's guest is extra special to me, not because of her specifically, but because of the guest who brought her on to today's show. So many of you have heard from Sherry, one of my clients for the past couple of years, and her incredible leadership and her stories. And then now she's in a position where she's really giving back and mentoring other women, specifically in engineering fields. And she just has such a great gift of being able to work as the only woman in the room. Unfortunately, she had to learn that the hard way. But one of her college classmates and sorority sisters is also an incredible woman in leadership doing really big things in the world. And she suggested that I connect with her. And here she is today on my podcast. Marie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to start out with a more formal bio, and then we'll get into today's episode. Dr. Marielena DeSanctis is the president at Community College of Denver. She is a collaborative, transparent, entrepreneurial, and decisive leader with more than 20 years of progressive experience across K-12 technical college and large multi-campus community colleges. She is a dynamic visionary and passionate servant leader, uniquely positioned to build a vibrant education and employer ecosystem that embraces the fourth industrial revolution and drives economic development and social mobility in our communities and the nation. And I'm very excited to hear about her multitude of career transitions and how she's gotten to where she is today. So let's actually start out with maybe a more holistic question, which is, what is your secret to success?
I just dive into whatever position I'm in and learn as much as I possibly can. I leave no page unturned. There are not enough minutes and hours in the day, in the week, for me to just consume as much knowledge about whatever that work is that I'm doing. I always like to say that I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I am definitely the hardest working person in the room. I would say, other than that, I've just been incredibly fortunate to have some amazing mentors along the way that have pointed me in directions, have given me opportunities that said, hey, I think you're selling yourself short. You are able to take this step, and encouraged me along the way.
Yeah. Speaking of selling yourself short, I haven't met a person with a PhD and a degree in mechanical engineering who wasn't smart. Right. So there you go. Right. Now, I know that's not exactly what you're saying, but this whole idea of not being the smartest person in the room and being willing to not be the smartest person in the room is a huge foundation to what I teach. And I think that a lot of women in particular are striving for that level of perfectionism of having all the answers before they raise their hand. And I think probably what you're pointing to is being willing to do that earlier than what might feel comfortable. And is that true?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about that transition then from an engineering background into education.
When I graduated from Georgia Tech, I went to go work for a manufacturing company out in Birmingham, Alabama. Little did I know that they had been court ordered to hire a female engineer. In the company's 100+ year history, they had never had a female engineer. So I guess they thought that a Latina female engineer checked all kinds of boxes for them. Met a lot of resistance. I would say it was a company divided. Half of the engineers in the company were excited and embracing of my participation in their world, if you would, and half really felt like I didn't belong and I shouldn't be there, and so on and so forth. Worked for that company for almost 6 years. Ultimately, while I was based in Birmingham, Alabama, I was traveling the eastern 2/3 of the country, had my son Connor, knew that we were wanting to have another child, which was ultimately Allie, and that the travel kind of needed to, take a back seat. My son told his preschool teacher that his mom was a stewardess. So that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. I was able to convince the company to let me open a satellite office in South Florida, which was where I was born and raised, and my family was living, and realized that, all future opportunities in that company were going to take me back to either Birmingham, Alabama, or traveling again. So I ended up weird alignment of sun, moon, and stars. The school where my son was going was a pre-K 3 through 12 school. And they said, hey, we're dying for our physics and calculus teacher. I said, yeah, okay, great. I'll ask around. They said, no, we're talking about
you.
And I said, have you people lost your mind? Right? I've got a company car, an expense account, season tickets to the Dolphins, the Heat, the whole 9 yards. And I just kind of thought about it for a minute and said, you know what? Let me take a gap year before that was a term that was popular, and figure out what's next for me in engineering. Do I want to go work for a big, one of the big engineering firms, a CH2M Hill or somebody like that? Do I want to stay in the kind of manufacturing construction sector? I just didn't really know where to pivot to. So I said, you know what? I love calculus and I love physics. How hard could this possibly be? I can do that and also spend time interviewing and figuring out where my next landing spot. I think everybody should have to teach at some point in time in their life. It is one of the most challenging roles I think you could have. So that 1 year of teaching turned into 6, ultimately made the transition over to public schools, and taught in public schools for a year, became a high school assistant principal, ultimately principal of Fort Lauderdale High School, which is the oldest high school in Broward County, and a very challenging school. It was in disarray, in complete disarray. It's an A school today, and was the year after I left there, became assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction for Broward County Public Schools, which is the sixth largest public school district in the country. I was getting ready to apply for superintendencies when the president over at Broward College, which is the community college there in Broward County, kept telling the superintendent, "Hey, I'm going to steal her one day. I'm going to steal her one day." And they would, giggle and laugh. And he's like, "No, I'm not kidding. I really am going to steal her one day." And in 2014, spring of 2014, I got a phone call and he said, "Hey, you know how I keep telling the superintendent that I'm going to steal you one day? Today's the day." He had a position on his cabinet for a vice president of student affairs. I said, "I don't even know what a vice president of student affairs is at the college level." And he said, "You got this. You're smart. You can do this." And, I said, "Hey, why not step through that door? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? I don't like it. I'm not good at it. I've got a national reputation in K-12. I can always step right back into K-12." And again, that was spring of 2014. And here I am still in higher ed.
Oh my goodness. That's such an amazing story and just such a testament to what we spoke about before, which is your willingness to just dive in and learn and continue to grow as you go. But I am curious, do you have a sense of the special sauce that you have that makes people steal you? I always like to remind my clients that those situations don't happen by accident, right? That there is a reason that somebody is so adamant about bringing you onto their team. So do you have a sense, looking back on your career, what it was that allowed to all of these opportunities?
I think that there's a couple of notable things in my past. My daughter likes to tell me, she's 26 now. So she's old enough to have this kind of insight. And with a bachelor's in psychology, I believe her, that I'm an incredible fixer. And the world has told me that I'm an incredible fixer. So I alluded a little bit to Fort Lauderdale High. It was the first year that I was there. I want to say, and, forgive me for, I'm going to be off plus or minus 5. Right. But there were 131, I want to say, critical incidents. And people say, "What's a critical incident?" I'm like, when the SWAT team shows up and mounted police, right? We're not talking about a little fight. We're talking, there were gangs, there were drugs being sold on campus. It was difficult. It was a very difficult school. By the time I finished my 3 years as principal there, we had less than 20 critical incidents, which is still less than 20 too many. But, a huge difference in what was going on, safety wise at that school. The school became a B-rated school that year and became an A the next year and continues to be so many, many years later. And I can tell that story over and over again. There's just a number of things that I did as vice president of student affairs that completely changed the student experience at Broward. A number of things that I did as central campus president or, senior vice president over both academics and student services that I think, my outcomes speak for themselves. I think aside from that, I tend to have a very disarming personality. People just seem to be drawn to me, which helps me build my network. And I'm really good at keeping my network active. I think women sometimes are shy about reaching out, particularly to men that would be in their professional network, to just say, "Hey, I'm still here. And by the way, this is what I've been up to for the last couple of months." Just want to keep the conversation open. And as I look back, there are so many opportunities that have come my way, or community support for a promotion or an opportunity that have come my way because I kept that network active.
Oh, it's so good. And, I have to say that, I enjoy a lot of my conversations, but I really do agree that you're very disarming. You're very enjoyable to be in conversation with. I want to share with the audience a really great example of being able to speak to your accomplishments in a humble way. Like it's almost like we didn't even see it happen. The veil was in front of our eyes, but yet you spoke to your accomplishments in an incredibly strong way and also humility. So that's a great example of how to do that, ladies. Listen to this podcast again. So speaking of challenging situations, what drew you to Community College of Denver, and what are some of the challenges that you're able to work on there?
Yeah, so two things really drew me to the Community College of Denver. The first is because I had worked in Broward County Public Schools and then I was over at Broward College, I was working with the Chief Academic Officer, Dan Gohl, back at Broward County Public Schools on this whole notion of learner and employment records, having a digital wallet where students own their own records of learning. You could also, add employment records, right? And this would all be housed on your cell phone, much like our driver's licenses are here in Colorado. It would be verifiable, immutable, even more secure than your traditional transcript. And how did we build skills-based transcripts instead of, hey, I took business 1015 and nobody really knows what that means, including the student who took the class. So I was working on that work in Florida. At the same time, I was connected to a group that was working on the same thing here in Colorado. I had heard Governor Polis speak about this several times. He's the governor here in Colorado. So I knew that it was a passion of his also. I was meeting some resistance outside of just Broward County, like people in Tallahassee didn't really embrace or understand what it was that we were trying to do. And so put that feather in Colorado's cap, right? My curiosity about what was happening in Colorado was piqued. I will say that the recruiter for the Community College of Denver did an excellent job. I had been cautioned early on in my career in higher ed by an incredible mentor, Maria Harper Marinick. She's the former chancellor of the Maricopa Community College system in Arizona. She said, listen, as a Latina woman who's been, in the Aspen Rising President's Fellowship and, you speak nationally, you're on these national committees, you're going to get these phone calls asking you to apply for presidencies, not because they think anything of your accomplishment, but they want to check the box that there was a Latina in the pool and therefore we had a diverse pool. So you need to be very careful that if you're going to apply for a job, that people actually know what your accomplishments were and how those accomplishments relate to the challenges of the college that you're applying to. Phenomenal advice, right? Because the last thing you want to do is be known as that person who's applied for 10 jobs and never got it. And it's not actually your fault. It's
right.
So the recruiter kept reaching out to me and 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 reaching out to me. And finally I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to this lady if for no other reason so that she'll quit reaching out to me. She had done her homework on me and was able to make that connection, was able to say, hey, I know that you had this accomplishment and this is what the Community College of Denver needs. I know you've had this accomplishment and this is what the Community College of Denver needs. So at that point, I got serious about researching the Community College of Denver and Colorado in general, and found that the post-secondary attainment rate, so for the non-educators, it means people that have a college credential of some sort after the age of 25 or older, the gap between the Hispanic population and the white population in Colorado is either the largest in the country or the second largest in the country. And that really pulled at my heartstrings. How could I, as a Latina leader, know that this was happening in Colorado, a state that everybody thinks is incredibly well educated? Well, it is incredibly well educated, but a lot of that education is imported talent, like myself. The Hispanic community that has either come here as recent immigrants and or, been here for a while is not enjoying higher education at the rate that whites are. And I couldn't know that and not want to be a part of the solution. And quite honestly, I just said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and apply and put it in God's hands. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, I'm doing great work here in Broward County, and I'll continue to do that. That's where I was born and raised. And I guess God's plan was for me to come to the Community College of Denver. And in January, it'll be 3 years that I've been here.
Wow. And thank you for the story about the recruiter, because it really points to our impact as women. And I really commend her for her ability to connect those dots for you, knowing that you were like, it was almost like a peer-to-peer, like she saw you and she was able to pull that out for you so that then you could apply. I mean, it's just absolutely a brilliant story. So how is it going in terms of the Hispanic population and being able to give, more opportunities for them in Denver?
There's so much work to be done. But a couple of highlights, I would say. One, we formed a partnership with the Hispanic Restaurant Association and created a food and beverage language institute. And it is much more amazing than it sounds on its surface. And
I'm kind of excited. I actually think it sounds pretty cool. It's like, yes.
Well, what's exciting about it to me is that the reason for it, the why behind it, is that a bunch of restaurant owners, Hispanic and non-Hispanic, came together and said, you know what? Our kitchen staff, our back of the house staff is largely recent immigrant Hispanic, do not speak English. And while they're incredible workers and we love having them here and they're doing great work, we also recognize that for many of them, they're just doing this to put food on the table. And this is not their passion. They aspire to bigger and better things. So their why was, let's arm them with contextualized language skills, right? To help them within the job that they're doing and help them advance if they want to through promotions in the food and beverage industry. And let's give them some business skills and some, navigating higher ed type skills so that if they don't want to do this or they want to start their own restaurant or whatever the case may be, that there is a path for them out. We don't want to have like them in prison into this industry just because they don't have any other opportunities. And I love that why, right? I just love that why. So really, really proud of the work that the team here at CCD has done with Hispanic Restaurant Association to get that off the ground. I think the other really impactful partnership thus far has been a really strong partnership with the Mexican consulate here. Early on in my time here at Community College of Denver, they decided that the Community College of Denver would be their primary educational partner. So what that looks like is we send staff from the Community College of Denver over to the Mexican consulate once a week to do information sessions, how to complete the FAFSA, how to access scholarships, what our academic programs, what our student services look like. In turn, the Mexican consulate provides scholarship dollars for Mexican nationals here in Denver to attend the Community College of Denver. But beyond that, it's just a really great friendship, I will say, with the consul general and his staff, along with CCD. So we're constantly inviting each other to each other's events. The consul general, Senor Pavel, came to our graduation this last spring. There's just such a great open door of communication that I know is benefiting a bunch of students or prospective students that are either recently here in the United States or have been here and are just trying to find their way into higher ed.
And I feel like, so my children go to private school, and I'll share with you a story, and I'm kind of conflating higher education and private school and access to both for Hispanic communities. And one of the things that has been very obvious to me in a private school is that the numbers of the Hispanic students are very low. And a lot of those students, the parents are bringing them in from 45 minutes away, different longer commutes. And then, so they're not even integrated into the school community because they don't actually live in the area. And this is something that has been very obvious to me, just like literally like looking around the room. And recently there was an identification for a BIPOC affinity group that they were putting together, and Hispanic wasn't mentioned. as like it said etc. But it was like Black and Asian and East Indian, and I actually was taken aback by that, and living on campus at UC Berkeley as well. It's just so obvious to me that the community or the education does not reflect what I see in the community. So when I walk around the streets, when I am at the grocery store, the Hispanic population in California is very high. And in the more privileged education system, it is not. It's like non-existent. So I'm very appreciative of this awareness around this challenge and the ability to kind of speak to it, and also to provide a safe haven for the Hispanic population as well. Because I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but this kind of gets under my skin too, is that, I have a friend of mine who goes to school at UC Berkeley on scholarship as a Hispanic woman, and she feels literally unsafe and threatened on campus. And so, creating communities, safe environments where they can thrive is such a huge, important mission. I applaud you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do a really unusual graduation, which I would hope that any higher ed or even K-12 educators maybe latch onto. It seems really antithetical to me to have a graduation where all the students are sitting in the first couple of rows and all the families are all the way in the back, and it's at 10 a.m., right? Like, we don't care what's going on in your life. If you want to be at your kid's graduation, like, you got to drop everything. And that's just untenable for a population that is working, from a lower socioeconomic class. So we have graduation all day long. And we do it outside, and we have DJ and food trucks and all kinds of stuff going on. But at the core of it is that when the graduate comes to get their diploma from me as the president, we do the traditional, shake my hand, take the picture with the president, and then I invite up to stage the rest of their village, right? Be that tios and tias, abuelos, abuelas.
Oh.
So, sometimes it's a student with their dog and they're like, this is my only family, right? Other times they're, 25 strong and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this stage going to break? But whatever, if it does, whatever, because, it takes the entire family, particularly in a Hispanic family. That entire family has made a sacrifice to send that student to college, both financially and in the lost opportunity of that student having working hours, right? The income. So it's really important to us here at the Community College of Denver that we celebrate not only the student, but the entire family that contributed. And it just makes for an absolutely beautiful graduation experience. Is it a long day for the employees? Yes. And it's been a long day for many, many years for those students that have probably been working, taking care of siblings and studying and. So to give up an entire day to make sure that everyone is included is something that we will always do.
This is making like crying. So yeah, it's like, I was going to say tear up. I was like, I hope this is on YouTube. Yeah, the photos and oh my God, it's so important. This is just, yeah, it's like, I don't even know what to say, but that's such a big deal.
It's unbelievable. Come on out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's keep going on this. So your mom is from Cuba. I wanted to hear some of your personal story, your personal connection, aside from just being a Latina woman, but I think you have a deeper rooted connection to your culture and your background. So I'd love to hear more about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people call me Marie because it's easier for them to say, but it's Marielena. My mom was born and raised in Cuba. She came over in 1961, leaving her mother behind, her clothes behind, her everything behind. She didn't know if she'd ever see her mother again. My grandmother, Abuela, came in 1965. She ultimately met my dad. They got married in 1969. He's of Irish and Finnish descent. his mother was born in Ireland. His father was born in Finland. So I'm first generation in the United States on my mother's side and second generation, if you would, on my father's side. So a recent U.S. person, I guess. I don't even know what to say there. So my grandmother moved in a few weeks before I was born to help out for a little while, and was there 30 some years later. She never learned how to speak English, so I grew up actually speaking Spanish first. I'm completely fluent in Spanish. It was just always a very strong influence in my life. My grandmother, made sure that we grew up with all of the Cuban heritage and traditions and food and festivals and ideals that come with being a Hispanic family. My mom graduated with her bachelor's at the same time that I graduated from kindergarten. It's one of my favorite pictures.
Wow.
Is her in her graduation gown with getting her bachelor's degree when I was, graduating, if you would, from kindergarten. And my mom just always kept education very front and center in our life and always talked about, she had to leave everything behind and look at all of these people that in Cuba had these amazing professions and these mansions of homes, and all of that can be taken away from you in a blink of an eye. But what nobody can ever take away from you is your education. Mm-hmm. You can't take the knowledge that's in my brain, short of a catastrophic accident or an illness. That cannot be taken away from you. And you can always rebuild your life if you're educated and you have enough skills that you can continue to open doors that might not be obvious doors and continue to step through those. So I think that's just always played such an important role in my life.
We've touched on this. It is definitely a theme of today's conversation about why you feel compelled and have this strong desire to really have that voice at the table. It sounds like through various points of your career, promotions or opportunities have happened without that voice as well. And then you created this opportunity for yourself where, nope, I'm going to get both, right? I'm going to be the president and have a voice. So let's just speak to that a little bit more as we round out today's conversation about why you feel motivated to have that voice at the table and what's your drive.
Well, Stacy, I'm going to throw you a curveball that you're
okay. Good.
So most recently, I will say that I am now a survivor of domestic violence. And I think probably why, Sherry wanted to connect us, because it's not only now my voice at the table as a Latina, but it's my voice at the table to say, domestic violence happens to anyone and everyone. This is not an epidemic that is constrained to people that are poor or uneducated or women of color or men of color, right? It can happen to anyone, and you never know who around you it's happening to. Number one. Number two, I think particularly for executive women, there's an additional layer of embarrassment, shame, of wanting to keep what has happened to you a secret. Because, you're smart, you're accomplished. How could that possibly happen to you? And if it did, then you must not be as smart or accomplished or, make good decisions. So therefore, we now think less of you. And if you thought that it was hard to navigate the glass ceiling before, like that glass ceiling just came crashing down on you, if you admit that domestic violence became a part of your life. I'm just always passionate about giving voice to people who don't believe they have a voice or don't believe that they can speak out because of the personal ramifications on them. I'm really, really focused on giving hope to people who have lost hope, be that because they find themselves in a career that they think is a dead end, or they find themselves in a domestic violence situation and don't know how to get out. I can tell you that even with the social network that I have, with the financial resources that I have, with the ability to be intelligent and navigate, it was impossible. Impossible. The barriers that I came up against, I completely embrace and understand why women throw their hands up and say, this is too much. So, I'm committed at this point to not only use my voice as a Latina leader, but use my voice as a Latina survivor of domestic violence to help close loopholes in legislation, to really help change the mindsets of people and build a stronger support system, particularly for Latina women that find themselves in this horrific situation.
I'm an incredibly emotional person, but to have cried twice on today's podcast episode, I was thinking as you were talking, and the parallels are not the same, but women endure a tremendous amount of abuse in the workplace. Like, it's not the same at all, but it's, and when you were talking about the shame of it, I was thinking about the shame of how we are spoken to in closed doors, what we've been told throughout our career by men. It is abuse, and it sticks with you, and you carry it, and you feel like you can't tell anybody about it because you should have either been stronger to speak up sooner, or, maybe if you were smarter or better at your job, then you wouldn't have been spoken to. I mean, there's just so much of that. And I'm really glad that you shared about a person in executive leadership in particular, not being able to talk about domestic violence 100%, and also just the abuse that we endure on a regular basis. So, yeah.
We spoke to it at the beginning of the podcast, right? I went to a company that had never had a female engineer, and there were those who embraced it, and there were those who made life really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's think about the woman who is looking to advance towards executive leadership, thinking about her career. Any final words of advice for her as she's trying to kind of navigate the politics and where I should go next and what I should do? Anything that kind of comes to mind, advice that you'd like to give?
I think the first thing that comes to mind, Stacy, is as women, we tend to look at a job description, and if we can't check every single box on that job description, we're like, oh, I'm not qualified. Research will say, men are far more accepting of the fact that, I meet half of those qualifications. I'm fine. I'll apply anyway. I think my number one piece of advice would be, if it's something that you really want to do, and just go for it. Just go for it. You'll figure out the rest of the stuff, those boxes that you couldn't check, somewhere down the way. There isn't a job out there where there isn't some on-the-job training. I don't care what degree you have. When you go work for a specific company or school or whatever the entity may be, profit or nonprofit, there are going to be nuances to that particular organization that you're just going to have to learn, and be okay with that. Be okay with the fact that you're not going to know everything, and just go for it, I think, is my best advice.
I love it. That's so good. And I really like what you said about the on-the-job training, is that we think that there's not that, right? But that's like everywhere, right? You're going to have to learn. There's going to be a learning curve. So I'm like, let's just go into the learning curve, right? We don't think about it. So that's so good. Something else that kind of popped into my head, I said, Marielena DeSanctis for president. I realize you're already president of one college, but I am just like, I am your fan. I am your supporter. I know that you dipping your toe. I don't know what levels of politics, but, speaking up and sharing. So I have no doubts that we'll hear more from you in the future. But how can people continue to stay connected to you and follow you, whether it's online or I guess they could come to your school, but what other resources?
Yeah, well, I'm a little, nervous about stalking at this point.
Yes, okay.
But, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. My email here is my first name, Marielena, Marielena, all one word, .DeSanctis, DESANCTIS @ccd.edu.
Well, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I am so thankful for your vulnerability and sharing and your mission, right? And that you're bringing your leadership to this world. You are why I do the work that I do. And I am super grateful to Sherry. She's a smart woman there. I'm so glad she put us into touch. Thank you.
I am as well, Stacy. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today. Yourpromotabilityscore.com and let me know how it goes.